Do you know that by the first quarter of 2026, artificial intelligence was being cited as a factor in 13% of layoffs in the United States, up from less than 1% 2 years earlier? And that when researchers asked companies about those decisions directly, nearly 6 in 10 admitted they had framed job cuts as AI-driven when the actual reason was financial. Hold both halves of that. The first number is real and it is rising fast. The second number tells you that a large share of what you are reading about AI destroying jobs is a story companies tell because it sounds better than the truth. That is the shape of this entire subject. There is a genuine transformation underway. There is also an enormous amount of noise layered on top of it, generated by people with reasons to exaggerate in both directions. Vendors who need the technology to sound inevitable, executives who need a modern explanation for ordinary cost-cutting, and commentators who need your attention. Nothing here is financial or career advice. It is an examination of published research, and your decisions are your own. What follows is an attempt to work out what the evidence actually supports about the next 10 years. Not the promotional version, not the apocalypse, the numbers, the disagreements between serious forecasters, and what the historical record says about how this has gone before. Begin with the forecasts, because the range between them is the most informative thing about them. Goldman Sachs has published some of the most cited work in this area. Their base case is that the process of firms adopting AI at scale takes roughly 10 years, and that during that transition, something in the region of 6 to 7% of workers face displacement. A narrower estimate, covering displacement driven purely by efficiency gains rather than broad adoption, puts the figure closer to 2.5% of employment. The World Economic Forum's projection runs on a different axis. It estimates roughly 92 million jobs displaced by 2030, alongside roughly 170 million created. A net gain of some 78 million. Elsewhere, you will find figures like 300 million jobs eliminated globally, roughly 9% of world employment. And you will find much larger claims, extending toward half of all jobs being touched by automation over a multi-decade horizon. These numbers appear to contradict each other. Mostly, they do not. They are measuring different things over different periods with different definitions, and the differences are where the actual information lives. Displaced does not mean unemployed. It means a specific role at a specific firm ceased to exist. The person may move to another role in the same company, or to another employer, or to a different occupation entirely. Studies that count displacement events and studies that count net employment changes will always produce different figures, and both can be correct. Touched by automation does not mean replaced. Most of the very large percentages you encounter are measuring how many jobs contain tasks a machine could plausibly perform, which is a completely different claim from how many jobs disappear. A radiologist whose image pre-screening is automated has had their job touched. They still have a job. And every one of these is a forecast produced by people who were mostly wrong about the last technological transition using models calibrated on transitions that were not this one. The honest reading is this: serious institutions examining the same evidence converge on a middle estimate of somewhere between 2 and 10% of employment materially displaced over roughly a decade, with substantial job creation running alongside it. That is a large, real, painful transition. It is not the end of work. Now, the part the aggregate numbers conceal, and the part that matters most if you are trying to work out what this means for you. The pain is not distributed evenly. It is concentrated with extraordinary precision. The roles under genuine present tense pressure share a profile. The work is conducted primarily in text or structured data. The output is judged against a standard that is not especially demanding. The task is largely self-contained, and there is a great deal of training material available because the work has been done in the same form thousands of times. That describes clerical and administrative processing. It describes a large share of routine customer service. It describes basic content production. And the evidence here is more concrete than in most categories, with content writing roles projected to fall by roughly half toward the end of the decade. And in a development few predicted, It describes junior software engineering, where entry-level work has proven unusually exposed. That last one deserves attention because it inverts the assumption that dominated this discussion for 20 years. The received wisdom was that automation would hollow out routine manual and clerical work while technical and creative professions remained safe. The technical professions turned out to be exposed precisely because their work is text, is verifiable, and exists in enormous public quantity. And the roles that have proven most resistant are largely the ones that assumptions said would go first. Work requiring physical presence and dexterity in unstructured environments. Electricians, plumbers, nurses, care workers. The difficulty is not intellectual. It is that the physical world is chaotic in ways that are extremely hard to engineer for, and the robotics has not kept pace with the language models. Alongside those sit roles where the binding constraint is accountability, not capability, accountability. Someone must be answerable. In medicine, in law, in engineering sign-off, in fiduciary responsibility, there has to be a person who carries the consequence. And a system that cannot be held liable cannot occupy that position regardless of how capable it becomes. There is a structural problem emerging that concerns economists more than the headline displacement numbers, and it deserves to be stated clearly because it is the one with the longest shadow. If entry-level work in a profession is automated, where do the seniors come from? Professions have functioned as apprenticeships. The junior lawyer reviewing documents, the junior developer fixing small defects, the junior analyst assembling spreadsheets. That work was economically marginal, but developmentally essential. It was how judgment was built. You learned what mattered by handling a large volume of cases where the stakes were low. Automate that layer, and the immediate saving is obvious. The cost arrives in 10 years, when the profession discovers it has no mid-career cohort, because nobody came up through the work that produced one. This is a genuine coordination failure. No individual firm has any incentive to keep expensive junior staff to preserve a talent pipeline that benefits the whole industry. Each firm makes a rational decision, and the aggregate outcome damages everyone. Whether this materializes is one of the real open questions. It is possible that new training paths appear, or that AI tools compress the time required to develop judgment. It is also possible that we spend the 2030s discovering that we dismantled the mechanism by which expertise reproduces itself. Set against all of this is the historical record, and it is genuinely reassuring, with one important qualification. Every previous wave of automation destroyed occupations and created more than it destroyed. Mechanized agriculture eliminated most farm labor in the developed world. Those workers did not become permanently unemployed. Industrial machinery eliminated whole categories of craft work. New industries absorbed the displaced. The personal computer eliminated the typing pool and created an entire information technology sector far larger than the jobs it removed. The pattern is remarkably consistent, and the reason it holds is worth understanding. When a technology makes something dramatically cheaper, demand for it typically rises more than the cost falls, and the additional activity requires people. And the wealth created by the productivity gain gets spent on other things, generating employment in sectors that may not have existed before. The most instructive case is the automated teller machine. It was expected to eliminate bank tellers. It did reduce the number of tellers per branch, but by making branches cheaper to operate, banks opened many more of them, and total teller employment rose for years afterward. The role changed from cash handling to sales and service, but the jobs did not vanish. Here is the qualification, and it is not a small one. Those transitions were brutal for the specific people caught in them. The aggregate statistics recovered. Individual lives frequently did not. A handloom weaver displaced in the 1820s did not get retrained into a new industry. Communities built around a single industry that disappeared often never recovered across generations. When economists say the labour market adjusts, they are describing an aggregate over decades, not a promise to anyone in particular. And there is a real argument that this time differs in one respect. previous automation waves substituted for physical labor, and displaced workers moved toward cognitive work. This wave substitutes for cognitive work. The question of where displaced cognitive workers move is genuinely open, and confident answers in either direction are not supported by the evidence. Which returns us to that statistic from the opening, because it is the most useful thing in this entire subject, and it is almost never discussed. Nearly 6 in 10 companies admitted framing job cuts as AI-driven when the real driver was financial. Think about what that means in practice. A company overhired during a boom. Demand softened, interest rates rose, and cheap capital disappeared. It needs to reduce headcount. It can announce that it misjudged its hiring and is now correcting, which makes management look incompetent and the share price react accordingly. Or it can announce that it is deploying AI to transform its operating model, which makes management look visionary and the share price react rather differently. The layoffs are identical. The story is not. This means a substantial share of the evidence you encounter for AI destroying jobs is corporate communications rather than measurement, and it flows into the statistics. When researchers count layoffs where AI was cited, they are counting a narrative decision as though it were an economic observation. This is why that 13% figure needs handling with care. It is real and it is rising steeply. But it measures how often AI is invoked, not how often AI is responsible. The gap between those has been measured and it is enormous. So what does the evidence actually support for the next 10 years? A significant, painful, concentrated transition, not a collapse of employment. The credible middle of the forecast range sits at single-digit percentages of employment displaced over roughly a decade, with substantial creation alongside it. Historically, that is a large disruption. It is not civilizational. The pain concentrated in text-based, self-contained, high-volume work and, contrary to 2 decades of prediction, falling hardest on entry-level knowledge work rather than manual trades. A genuine risk to how professions reproduce expertise, which will not become visible for years and cannot easily be reversed once it does. And a media environment in which the signal is unusually hard to read because a majority of the reported evidence has been shaped by companies with an incentive to attribute ordinary cost-cutting to a technology story. If there is a practical implication, it is not the standard advice to learn to use the tools, though that is obviously sensible. It is this: the durable positions are the ones where the constraint is not the production of output, where someone must be accountable, where the physical world is messy, where the work depends on a relationship that has been built over time, where the difficulty lies in deciding what should be done rather than in doing it. The technology has become extraordinarily good at producing plausible output on request. It remains poor at determining what is worth producing, at carrying responsibility for the result, and at operating in an environment nobody designed for it. That gap may close. It has not closed yet, and there is nothing in the current evidence indicating it closes within the decade under discussion. Again, this is not career or financial advice. It is an argument for treating this subject the way you should treat any forecast attached to a large commercial interest, by checking what is being measured, by whom, and what they gain from your believing it. The transition is real. The apocalypse is being sold to you. Those are different things, and telling them apart is the whole skill.